Well, one of the things that we need to look at is the rising population of the elderly. In 1961, that it was less than 4%. In 2001, it was over 11%, and it's projected to be 27% over by the year 2030. Now, what has contributed to the higher medical healthcare costs? One of the things is the government has capped the intakes in the medical schools, in the local universities, and that has kept many doctors from graduating, many more doctors from applying for the medical school and from graduating as doctors, and that has contributed to the rising healthcare costs. And they have also capped the number of women who could enroll in the medical schools at 41%. I mean, besides it contributing to the higher rising healthcare costs, it also it is gender discrimination. You know, why if Singapore is an enlightened society, you know, why is there gender discrimination where women can only make up 41% of whoever goes to the medical school? Where is meritocracy? Is it just given lip service in a country like Singapore? A proper alternative and a true option. What would be a proper healthcare alternative? Remove the domestic foreign worker levy for qualified foreign workers. Well, the aged, they don't want to go to nursing homes, you know, across the causeway. You know, what is the right response? They like to age at home with their families. So, instead of raising the foreign worker levy, you should do away with foreign worker levies for foreign workers who want to work for a family to take care of the aged. That would be an appropriate response. Provide elder care tax credit. If you have an elder in your home who you are providing care and services for them to age in a dignified manner, then a tax credit should be given to this family. You know, you don't need qualified nurses to take care of the aged. You need some qualified nurses, but you don't need a whole lot of qualified nurses. What you need is what I would call certified geriatric caregivers or nursing aides, if that's a term that we would understand better, who are not fully qualified nurses, who may not need to be paid the wages for a fully qualified nurse, but what happens is that it contributes towards lowering the cost of healthcare, you know, and to ensure that this certified geriatric caregivers have enough training, they are well qualified. It's good to create a program and a registry of this qualified caregivers. And I think the most another very important thing that can go towards bringing the healthcare costs down is create retirement communities. Beacon Hill Village of Boston, USA is one such retirement community that has been created in the USA, and probably this is one initiative that the government could read to study to see if such a kind of a retirement community can be implemented in a country like Singapore. Such alternatives in healthcare, especially in aging and elder care, would make significant difference in a graying society like Singapore. Such initiatives would also promote successful aging as well as pioneer new approaches to aging, elder care throughout Singapore. The next issue that I want to talk on would be the issue of appropriate green policies. Green energy and workfare development. They increased budget. The Ministry of Environment and Water Resources saw its budget for the next fiscal year increase from 1 billion to 1.09 billion. Instead of, you see, the government adopts a very cluttered approach towards the green issues and renewable energy sector. Of course, they have the BCA mark, which the businesses have to get when they are doing new renewable upgrading to the infrastructure and all that. But it's a very cluttered approach. The budget could have done more to create a market that will encourage more companies to embark on green and renewable energy projects. Green job initiatives. Increase the number of industry sectors and businesses that have or are creating green jobs. Support creation of green jobs for a diverse mix of people with various educational backgrounds, not just the PNETs. Establish job readiness training programs for unskilled workers so that they can get jobs in the green industries. Align and increase the resources and expertise needed to grow the workforce capacity for these emerging and changing jobs. Invest in diverse worker education and training to prepare for green jobs. And increase education and training capacity to support green job growth. Types of green jobs. The alternative energy production and efficiency, which includes jobs in the wind energy. This is something that can be developed. Biofuels, biomaterials, solar and energy storage, energy efficiency, and advanced technology vehicles. Green building construction and retrofitting, which includes jobs in energy efficient building construction, retrofits, energy efficiency, and so on. Key investments and activities. So the government should work more closely. Go back, please. The government should work more closely with businesses and industries to create green sector skills alliances. Investing in worker education and training to prepare for green jobs, increasing education and training capacity to support green job growth, and supporting green jobs related research, information sharing, and learning. Capital Market Development and Task Force. Create a Capital Market Development Task Force which will develop a blueprint and action plan to create investment funds to foster the creation and grow new businesses and new industries within the green sector. This is the right time to set up such a capital market development task force, because the stocks of many reliable green sector companies have come down. And there needs to be a holistic approach instead of the cluttered approach that has been taken by the government, a more integrative approach, where not just the Ministry of Environment, but the whole of government, including the different ministries, will look at the green sector as part of growth. The green sector could be the savior of the ailing economy. There is a need for recognition. The current government of Singapore recognizes the need to have an integrated approach for green issues, and it has created the Energy Policy Group, which comprises of 4 sectors, which looks at economic competitiveness, energy security, climate change, and the environment. And they are headed by 11 ministries or different agencies. And these 11 ministries and agencies will pose a problem in developing uncluttered, effective, and timely appropriate green policies. There is a need and a necessity to advocate the formation of a new ministry, the Ministry of Green Resources and Renewable Energy. The creation of this new ministry will create accountability for the government to be focused on energy security, in tackling the threat of climate change, and also to develop the green sector. I have a write-up in my blog, singaporesocialactivist.blogspot.com, where you can read more on the green energy sector. And I would call to support the 60 Earth Hour, which is today, where the lights are turned out from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. In support of this worldwide initiative. And this is something that I feel that has been given lip service to. How many people in Singapore really know what is the 60 Earth Hour, what the 60 Earth Hour is? You know, how many people, I mean, of course, when you go to the websites, there are many businesses and organizations and even government agencies that have gone on to say that, well, we should support this initiative. But how many people in the grassroots know exactly what is the 60 Earth Hour? It is it's a global effort where the lights are turned off between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. in support of energy consumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Our next speaker needs no introduction. You can visit the Wikipedia website. There is a good history about him, his mission, his affiliations and achievements. He is the chief of the Singapore Democratic Party. Let us welcome Dr. T. Shun Wan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Reform Party. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of speakers came up to this podium and talked about the unemployment insurance. I think that's a very, very credible and worthwhile initiative to explore. Various terms have been used for its variation of what is more widely known as unemployment benefits. In certain countries they call it the retrenchment entitlements. The idea is for workers who have been retrenched all of a sudden find themselves without work, without a salary. But then the bills don't stop, because you continue to have to eat, you continue to have to use electricity, water. So the idea is that once a worker is retrenched, you still need to go on with the daily lives. So rather than have a sudden cutoff where no income is coming in, unemployment insurance would then at least tie the retrenched worker temporarily, so that the family, kids, don't find themselves in a situation that is completely unbearable and untenable. All this has social ramifications as well. Once you're out of a job, what happens? Financial pressures come in that affects your family affairs, relationship between husband and wife, and so on and so forth. So it has a lot of merit. Another idea that I think is very important, that I don't think has been canvassed enough, is minimum wage. And this is where, at a point where you say employers will not go below in terms of the amount that a worker is being paid. As you know, you have many Singaporeans here earning as little as what, $400, $300, $500 a month. How do you survive? Now, these two initiatives, or these two economic proposals, minimum wage, unemployment insurance, unemployment retrenchment, were both canvassed by the Singapore Democratic Party back in 2001 during the elections. It was 2 of 5 proposals that we put up. At that time, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew came up and rubbished it and said, if you have these proposals, you will bankrupt Singapore. Mr. UncleYap, I believe, followed suit, said that these were unworkable. Now, think about it. Contrast it with what is happening today. How much would you spend if you really provided unemployment insurance, unemployment benefits? Because when you build into it, people still have to eat. People still have to buy things. It is turned back into the economy again. If you provide minimum wage, workers will still have that income, or at least a standard of income that will allow them to plow back their income into the economy. You won't go bankrupt. But contrast it with this. You take $100 billion or even more. Take it and give it to a banker in New York. The banker takes it and says, it doesn't matter how my company does. Even if it goes belly up, I will take hundreds of millions of that money. Mind you, that's our money. Put it in my pocket, go back home, and then let the company drop. That's exactly what is happening today. Between the GIC and Temasek, and they haven't fully accounted for the funds that they've lost. You look at the investments in Citigroup, Merlion, UBS, tens of billions of dollars flushed down the toilet, just like that. And here you have our workers unable just to make ends meet. So much so that some of them had to resort to taking their own lives. We finished one of our cases one day, and we were just driving down outside subordinate courts on the way towards CTE, and then all of a sudden we see a crowd in front of one of the HDB blocks. There were the fire trucks and so on and so on. Everybody was looking up. And we looked up. And we saw a guy that's dangling, sitting on the parapet of the top floor, waiting to jump. I don't think the media is reporting all the statistics yet. In full. We do know one thing. There's a lot of hardship going on now. And yet this government is telling us, we're taking your money, we're putting it in investments, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, they'll bear fruit. That's not a guarantee. Because 20, 30 years down the road, we still could have another crisis. And then we'll kick the can down the road again and say, wait for another 30 years. That's where the problem is, isn't it, in Singapore? Because the government keeps telling us things, and there's no way that we can begin to take that into account. And when we lose the money, no one is held accountable. And then they come up with a fancy budget. We're going to plow $20.5 billion into the economy, whatever schemes that we want. My question is that, do you know if the money is going to be spent? How the money is going to be spent? Tell me. Does anybody here know? So why do we take it? Why do we take it from this government when it tells us that they're going to do something that is actually done? So then it brings me back to this question. Can you really bifurcate? Can you really split economics from politics? A lot of times people tell me, look, we shouldn't confuse bread and butter issues with human rights. There's absolutely no way that you can really split the two. Because one without the other just cannot work. As I said, these are all very noble ideas, very credible ideas, economic ideas. But if you don't have the political means to communicate this to the people, to make them understand, and to give them a free and fair chance to vote for these ideas, to vote for whichever political party carries those ideas, then those economic ideas cannot be put forth. Can you imagine if Barack Obama had come to them and made all these beautiful proposals, and he wasn't given access to the national media, He was sued repeatedly. Whenever he goes out and makes speeches, he gets prosecuted for speaking in public without a permit. How are any of these ideas going to come about? And this is what we've been trying to tell Singaporeans. That the opposition is not just a motley crew of hodgepodge of people coming together with very, very good ideas that were put up on the screen. But as long as we don't have a political system to be able to carry forward these economic ideas, we will remain where we are. 2001 to 2009, when we first brought up the idea, that's a period of 8 years, has gone by. And I can tell you that if we continue in this fashion, another 8 years will lapse. Lee Hsien Loong will hand his prime ministership now going to his son. And we will still be And so, not wanting to be facetious about this whole matter, I come back again and say, let us get serious. Let us get serious about taking care of the political arrangement. And I can tell you that Singaporeans are very prudent. Singaporeans have got the alternative ideas. Given the political freedom, these economic ideas will rise up to the benefit of the Singaporean society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chief. That was a very interesting point. I did say that, the PAP system has failed. It's not ticked for a long time. So, we need to change it. We need to replace it. We have a final speaker here. He is the chief editor of sgpolitics.net. It's a weblog on Singapore politics and current affairs. He is a socio-political activist who is deeply committed towards the development of a politically aware electorate, civil rights, social justice, and reform of the CPF system. We are one with him in this mission. Let me introduce to you Mr. Ingi J.
So good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Reform Party for giving me a chance to speak at this forum. I think this is a very opportune time to speak about the budget as well as the economic situation in general. Now, to put things in perspective, let me first offer the audience a sampling of some of the media headlines. Could you could you go back to the first, please? I'd like to offer the audience a sampling of some of the media headlines that I found over the past couple of weeks. Now, the first headline, Bloomberg News on 4th of February. Singapore GDP may shrink by a tenth in 2009. And this prediction was made by CLSA Asia Pacific Markets. The next headline I found, exports fall a record 35%. This is by the Straits Times of 18th of February. And this fall of 35% is the largest fall since the government began collecting data on this since 1977. The next headline is more seeking jobs help from the CDCs, also by the Straits Times for 18th of February. And it was reported that some 10,000 job seekers approached the CDCs for assistance in finding jobs over the past 4 months. Most of them were aged 40 and above, and the qualifications O levels and below. and many of them had the skills to take up jobs that were on the offer in the market. The next headline I found, 100 queue for 180 jobs by the Straits Times on 21 of February. It was reported that hundreds, almost 1,000 job seekers converged on Ang Mo Kio MRT station, hoping to land some 180 jobs offered by SMRT. So if 1,000 job seekers apply for 100 jobs, that is only a 10% chance of success. $4,300 jobs to go in the first quarter, reported in the Straits Times on 25th February, and the bulk of the retrenchments are expected to come from the electronics manufacturing sector. Record 29% slump in manufacturing output. Straits Times 27 February, just yesterday. Total manufacturing sank 29% last month compared to the same period the previous year. And this followed a slide of 12.8% in December. Job losses could exceed 99,000. More than 99,000 jobs could be lost as Singapore's worst recession takes its toll on workers. This was predicted by DBS Bank. So the DBS Bank economists predicted that the worsening downturn could inflict more pain on employees than what they suffered during the 1997 financial crisis, Asian financial crisis, the 2001 dot-com bust, or even the SARS outbreak in 2003. Now this slide is taken from Bloomberg. It shows that the fourth quarter GDP performance of Singapore is worse than all the other countries indicated. Singapore fell 16.4% in Q4 2008 compared to minus 3.8% for the US, minus 3.3% for Japan, and so on. So this, I hope, gives you some perspective on the economic turmoil that we are facing. And in response to this economic turmoil, the government has come up with this budget, which they cutely name it the resilience package. And in this resilience package, they talk about approaching the president for the second key to unlock our reserves, and they talk about how they present their case to the president, they persuade him, they present their facts and figures, they talk about transparency and accountability in our budget. Now I'd like to ask the ruling party, where was transparency and accountability when they sank in so many billions into those foreign banks? And where was transparency and accountability when town councils invested so many millions of the residents' hard-earned money into dubious structured products that have since been wiped out in value? Where was transparency and accountability then? The PEP's motto is to save jobs by saving businesses. But in such an economic climate, can jobs really be saved by such measures? The current downturn in the global economy has been accompanied by collapse in global demand. But Singapore's economy is still very much export-oriented, despite all the so-called restructuring that has been taking place over the past decade. Companies in this climate faced with the collapse in global demand, they have no reason to expand, but every reason to scale down to survive. If no one out there is buying your goods or services, the cheapest neighbor in the world or the easiest source of bank credit is not going to help your company stay afloat. So I question this premise that we must save jobs by saving businesses. Next point I'd like to make is the point about high office rentals. Now, this was not adequately addressed in the budget. The government is only providing a 40% property tax rebate for industrial and commercial properties. And it strongly urges landlords to pass this rebate to tenants. But the fact is that currently SMEs are suffering under the crushing burden of very high office rentals.
Yes.
And these high office rentals, they have risen so high because of absence of proper regulation. And it is these high rentals that have hurt SMEs in upturn and further damaged them in the downturn. Office rentals constitute one of the major overheads of small and medium enterprises. And in fact, it is one of the primary reasons why Singapore's economy has become more and more uncompetitive. So the government should actually enact stronger measures to force landlords to reduce their rents in these uncertain times. Now the next point I'd like to bring up is the suppression of working class wages. Now, as we all know, working class wages have been stagnant for the past decade. They have not kept pace with inflation. In fact, some wages have even declined in nominal terms. And the longer-term challenges facing working class Singaporeans is not just the high cost of living in Singapore, but also the suppression of wages due to the large import of unskilled foreign labour. Working class Singaporeans are not spared the ravages of globalization, as they are not provided the security of a minimum wage, nor that of a comprehensive welfare system. They have to compete with foreign labour who are willing to accept lower pay due to the fact that the majority of them do not bring their families to stay in high-cost Singapore. So in addition to just giving one-off budget measures to low-income families, a longer-term solution must be found to this dilemma. And the next point I'd like to bring up is this lack of retrenchment benefits. Now, for all the hype about this budget 2009, I wouldn't call it a resilience package because it only makes big businesses resilient. It does not make you and I more resilient. For all this incredible hype about this budget, it is such a surprise to me that there are no unemployment benefits for workers, apart from offering them an installment plan or income tax. And given that this is likely to be a sharp recession or even a soft depression, the lack of substantial unemployment benefits is indeed very surprising. And this is coming from a government that says that we want to stand together and move ahead. But I can't remember exactly because it's so hypocritical. So what are the longer term concerns that we should address? The first concern I'd like to bring up is the need for transparency and accountability in the government's accumulation, investment, and use of our reserves. Now, the government's operating revenue for FY 2008 is 40.5 billion. Okay, and the operating revenue for FY 2009 is estimated to be around 33 billion. These figures are taken from the budget website. But if you examine the balance sheet closely, the balance sheet that the government puts up on display does not include the revenue obtained from land sales, which is estimated to be anywhere from 5 to 10 billion this fiscal year. Now, when the government sells land on short leases, the proceeds are regarded as operating revenue. But for longer term leases, the proceeds are placed into the reserves and not accounted for in the budget statement. Now, if this government had used just a fraction of this proceeds from land sales, it need not have gone to the president for the second key to open our reserves. Besides land sales, how much income is not reported as operating revenue, but is siphoned off into the reserves without passing through public scrutiny. That means the government puts it into the reserves and you don't scrutinize it. The public is not given a chance to scrutinize the accounts. So it is these kinds of questions that we must address before we buy into the hype heaped on the mainstream media about Budget 2009. Okay, the second concern that I want to bring forward, to bring to your attention, is the need to address structural defects in the way the government manages our economy. Our economy is structured in a way that frequently allows a couple of major players or sectors to dominate the economic scene. And we also note that the government is fond of picking winners. The ruling party has essentially governed our economy in a top-down fashion. And this is an approach that is increasingly outdated and inefficient in this globalized era. An interventionistic approach to economic management interferes with free market forces and often results in misallocation of capital. For example, let's take the Singapore biotech space, for example. Now, Budget 2009, unfortunately, reinforces this top-down interventionistic approach to economic management that has so far been woefully inadequate in helping Singapore cope with the new challenges in the 21st century. And as we have read about in the mainstream media, despite the restructuring of the economy that was supposed to have taken place in response to the previous downturn in 1997 and 2001, Singapore was still the first economy in ASEAN to fall into recession last year. The whole of ASEAN, we were the first economy to fall into recession, despite all the restructuring that was supposed to have taken place. Why is that so? Well, our diversification away from the electronics manufacturing sector towards biomedical and financial services actually proved to be a double-edged sword, because the biomedical and financial services were the first sectors to fall in the global economy in 2008. And this is made worse by the fact that we are still very much export-oriented and very much dependent on the G7 nations for economic growth, especially foreign fund inflows from those nations. Now, regarding domestic consumption accounts for only 40% of our GDP. The consumption is 40% of our GDP. This is far less than other developed Asian economies, whose share of GDP in consumption is closer to 55%. So what we have here is a double whammy. Because our share of consumption in the domestic economy is only about 40%. Efforts to stimulate consumption by putting cash into people's pockets have less results as compared to similar measures employed in other countries like Hong Kong. And our over-reliance on exports makes us very vulnerable to the downturn in the US and Europe. So we are essentially hit by a double whammy. Now, the government's investment in infrastructure, healthcare, and education is of long-term value. But we also need independent and effective labor unions and a strong political economy to translate this into a narrowing income gap and rising living standards for all and not just a few. Now my last slide is on my proposed solutions to how we can tackle this economic crisis going forward. We should all work together and campaign for a reduction of GST in essential goods and services, because the lower income, although in absolute terms the lower income spend less on essential goods as compared to higher income, but in percentage terms, if you talk about percentage terms, lower income families actually spend more in percentage terms on essential goods and services. So that is the sound reason why we must reduce GST for essential goods and services. Second is to campaign for minimum wage, because I believe that everyone should live in dignity. No one should be forced to forgo the basic dignities of life in the name of globalization. And the third point I want to raise is that as concerned citizens, we must be prepared to vote in opposition members who recognize that the system is flawed and who are willing to fight to change the system. Thank you.
That was LEEgime. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of the panel session. It's about 3:50 now. I think we should take about